My name is Tim Bennett, and I'm an implementation specialist here at Trace. But prior to working at Trace, I spent over 20 years coaching Division I college soccer all over the country. I coached in the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and on the youth side, I was a development academy director and ECNL staff coach. So I've been lucky to be on many sides of youth soccer. Also joining me tonight is Michael Needham, and I'm going to let Michael kind of give you his background here.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim. So my name is Michael Needham. I've spent the last 20 years as a college soccer coach. Most recently, I was an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator at The Ohio State University. Prior to that, I was a head coach at the University of Rhode Island. I was also a head coach, started the program, had that fortunate experience of starting the program at New Mexico State University, was an assistant at George Mason University, and also at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I have spent a lot of time in the youth game as well. I am still a scout with US Soccer. And I look forward to spending some time with you guys tonight, answering questions, shedding some light on what college coaches are looking for positionally. Thanks, Tim.
Great. Michael and I have a lot of similar coaching backgrounds, but we also went to two rival schools. He attended and played at University of Rhode Island, and I attended Providence College. So we're locked, I guess, from that perspective as well. But the other way that we're connected is we're both very passionate about video analysis and video analysis specifically for player development. But we're also linked about using video in college recruiting. And that kind of binds us in a whole other way. And this has been a really difficult year. And we're very well aware the current state of college recruiting, with the dead periods, canceled tournaments and showcases, league games, ID camps, seasons, everything. But the positive is that recruiting and college soccer and identification, it's still going on. Opportunities are still out there. But there are new obstacles and new challenges because of COVID and its financial impact on college athletics. The way that I kind of view it, it's as if Michael and I are on the same team and Michael gets red carded for like the 10th time out of the season, and we're playing down to 10, and we've got to figure out a way to win. And that's
Tim only says that. Tim only says that because we played at rival schools. So he thinks that my team was a bunch of whackers. So chalk one up for Tim in the chat.
Isn't that how it always is? Like the one rival is the hack and the other one isn't. That's just kind of the way it goes. But tonight we're gonna find a way to overcome this landscape, overcome these kind of COVID obstacles. And in particular, we're going to discuss how to create a Trace ID playlist based on your position. One question that we always get asked in our workshops and conversations and everything else is, what are college coaches looking for? What makes up a college coach's evaluation of a player? And you can talk to 100 different college coaches and you're going to get 100 different answers. But there are 4 basic similarities to all of those subjective answers. The first kind of element of an evaluation is a player's technical ability: dribbling, passing, receiving, shooting. But more importantly, it's the execution of these technical aspects under pressure. The second aspect of an evaluation is the tactical ability, an individual player's decision-making skills. The third aspect is the physical. It's not just general athleticism, but it's also a very soccer-specific based athleticism. And the last part of a college coach's general evaluation, and probably the most important part, is the academic part. But closely tied to that academic part is the social and the character of that prospective student athlete. So now that we know what a college coach generally bases an evaluation on, how do we get evaluated in this new landscape? Since all these live recruiting opportunities are limited or non-existent, how do we recreate these lost in-person recruiting opportunities? COVID-19 has greatly accelerated the usage of video in player identification by college coaches. The simple answer is, well, we'll just put together a playlist, a highlight tape, and send it out. Well, it's a little bit more complex than that now. Prior to COVID, video was not part of the process. And if it was kind of a luxury. And if it was part of it, it was just one of those simple highlight reels, which really does a very inadequate job of presenting all sides of a player or recreating that in-person evaluation. It was essentially an incomplete picture of a player, just the best moments, a top 10 list. And no one plays perfectly. So it ends up actually being a very stagnant picture of a player. You're actually probably better off sending a selfie in many ways. And if you weren't sending a top 10 list, you were sending full games. And nobody watches full games anymore. And I would really like to meet the college coach that watches every 90-minute game that has been sent to him or her. It's impossible. So given this new COVID-influenced landscape, college coaches need and want more. What they want is complete context. And what essentially complete context is it's recreating the same experience a college coach would have viewing a player in person. We're just having to recreate it virtually, right? So now that we know what's essential and we've got to recreate these complete contexts through Trace's all-in-one solution, Trace ID, let's turn this over to Michael and see what we should kind of put on our Trace ID playlists. Michael?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure, Tim. I think the first thing, most important thing to understand is what is Trace, right? And Trace is an all-in-one game film system. It's absolutely more than a camera. We pride ourselves in our powerful software tool. What that does is it records and generates individual highlights, accelerates player development, offers tools for sharing and college recruitment. And last but certainly not least, and what we're talking mostly about tonight is Trace ID. Trace ID allows players to take control of their recruiting process and gives them everything they need in one place to actually help them market themselves to potential college coaches. What does all that mean, right? Players love Trace. They love to see themselves play, make improvements in their own game, and they love the ability to share things easily. We don't want anything to be hard. And be able to share with friends, family, and then for the purpose of tonight, really being able to share with college coaches. All right, coaches love Trace, right? Flat out. Okay, all you coaches out there, Trace saves you time, right? You don't have to go and help these players compile their highlight reels, put them all together, find the moments for them. That's all done for you by Trace, right? And in turn, that streamlines the recruiting process and allows you to stay focused on coaching and not being just a recruiting liaison, which we've all done. And last but certainly not least, well, parents absolutely love Trace, right? Because whether you end up playing in college or you don't, we all want to remember the moments. I have two little children of my own. I have a 7 and 11-year-old, and I want to remember them playing soccer. And we want to have those moments, and I want to have those memories of every time they touch the ball. That's super exciting. And then the ability to share that with family and friends, right? And then again, for the purpose of tonight, I think the important thing that you guys understand is that college coaches love Trace. And the reason they love Trace is because of the personalized emails that they get from you. Personalized emails are critical. They don't want to get something from a recruiting service that went to 300 schools. They want something directly from you that tells them why you're interested in the school, what you're looking for, and then provides them with video content that they can learn more about you. They also have the ability in there to find all the information that they need in one place. They don't have to chase things around. They don't have to chase video with your coaches. They can do that right in your Trace ID. They can view your playlist, and if they want to see more, then they have the ability to go and watch more if they want to. And then they can spend their time with the important conversations, which are asking your coaches about what your character's like. Can you be trusted? How are you in the locker room? Some of those things that Tim touched on in the beginning, they can have those conversations with your coaches as opposed to talking about what your left foot's like because they've already seen that. So that gives you a good picture of what Trace is like or what Trace is. Let's just go ahead and we can move along.
Good. Before we kind of dive into very specific position characteristics, there needs to be a general theme about your Trace ID. And your playlist has to reflect, or those specific individual player characteristics, those position characteristics have to encompass the four elements of the game: in possession, out of possession, right? Attacking and defending, and then transition to attack and transition to defend. What you want to prove in your highlights, or what you want to showcase, is you want to showcase your game understanding, your soccer IQ, your initiative, and of course your technical ability. And as we mentioned, technical ability under pressure, and then also your physical ability. And that's not just basically speed. It's a lot more than that. It's quick change of directions. It's changing angles. It's adjusting. It's soccer athleticism. When you start to think about your playlist, right, showcase your strengths at all time within your position. Do not mind read what you think college coaches are looking for. Present yourself and use those strengths that are going to translate very, very well to the next level. In particular, maybe to that particular school. If a certain school plays a certain way, if they, live off of a long diagonal ball and you're a center back, then including some moments within your playlist that show that particular style of play. And that's kind of how you should think just generally about it. The other aspect before we dive in here to the weeds a little bit is you don't have to create a perfect moment. What I'm finding out as we educate a lot of players and parents and coaches about this is they search the perfect moment. And the perfect moment doesn't exist because we don't play perfectly. So, and we'll point out some examples here to show that. So there are a lot of great moments from each individual game that you trace that really are going to make actually a fantastic playlist. So let's dive into each position here, and I'm going to let Michael start it off with our goalkeepers.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tim. You picked the shortest guy in the room to do the goalkeepers, which is lovely the way it works that way. I think so. Goalkeepers, a lot of them, I think all goalkeepers will tell you that they're the most important player in the game, but that remains to be seen. We'll see about that. I think as a former college coach, really there's a bunch of things that you're looking for in the goalkeeper, and these are the things that you're going to want to highlight in your trace ID. Number one, how well you read the game, right? You want to highlight your ability in the air, dealing with crosses. You don't want to show a ball floating over your head. Obviously, you want to show that you can read the track of a ball and go up and get it. Can you manage the space behind the back four, right? Are you someone that sits on your line and your team has to sit in a really deep defensive shape because you play so deep on your line and have the inability, you don't have the ability to manage that space in behind. So can you show that? Your ability to come out and intercept balls that are played over the top. Other ones, in actually the run of play, balls around the top of the box, are you quick enough to get off your line and intercept through balls that are played in behind your back four? My next point is shot stopping ability. That's why you're back there, is to make saves. So absolutely, you got to show us making saves. Number one, your ability to extend and make great saves is super important as a goalkeeper. Second to that is probably 1-versus-1, your ability on breakaways. Can you get into a defender's feet? Are you fearless? Is your timing right? That's kind of the defending side of things. And then if you look at the attacking side, how's your distribution under pressure? Can you connect the short pass? Can you connect the long pass? Do you do those at the right time? Those are both equally important, right? Goalkeepers are not just defenders. You must also now, in the modern game, be a constructive part of the game. And last but certainly not least, the thing I want to touch on before I talk to you about this moment, I think, is a lot of times in the modern game, we talk about goalkeepers and being responsible for building our attack out of the back and, starting the beautiful game. But we've all watched college soccer games. Tim's watched a lot of them. I've watched a lot of them. And a lot of people on this call have watched a lot. And a lot of time the ball ends up in the goalkeeper's hands. And when it does, if you have the ability to punt a ball 80 yards, you need to share that on your trace ID and let coaches know that you can stretch the opposition with a big punt, and absolutely highlight that on your highlight reel. That is a strength of yours, and you need to do it. So as we just look at this moment, this is a great example, and this is our first one. So this is kind of the format that we'll go through as we do. We'll walk through it. So this moment starts actually in the midfield. So it starts here, and as play builds through the midfield, we don't really see the goalkeeper, but we will start to see the impact. The ball ends up in a wide area, okay, and it's going to get played in behind. She makes a great decision not to come, sets her feet, good footwork, and is able to extend and make a fantastic save. Okay, this tells a college coach a ton of information about this goalkeeper. This decision right here, as this ball gets played, if she comes, that's a goal. Instead, she stays, challenges the shooter, right, and ultimately wins the battle, wins that 1v1 battle. That is a fantastic example of great goalkeeping, right? As Tim had mentioned, our colleague Karen is in monitoring our chat room, and you've probably seen her actually in there. She's going to relay some questions to Tim and I as we go through. Karen, do we have any questions to this point?
We don't have any goalkeeper specific questions so far. We've just had some general trace related questions.
I've got a couple things to add to Michael. I think the
Awesome.
one thing from a goalkeeper standpoint in a playlist is just catching everything. Like, and I know that sounds a little bit elementary, but you'd be surprised anytime you go to an event, a showcase or event, and you're watching goalkeepers warm up, because that's usually the best time to evaluate them seriously, because you never know how that particular game is going to play out. I'm amazed by how there are not very many that catch things cleanly. And so when you are creating your playlist, besides this particular moment here where she's up off the ground and she obviously has to defect it around the near post, is just simple catching it in traffic and under pressure. And at the college level, anytime you give up a rebound, especially in tight situations, that's a goal. And that's what college coaches want to think. I want those goalkeepers that don't give up easy stuff and every once in a while have to make a special save. And the ability of catching a simple ball through different techniques really kind of showcases that.
And that's a great point. I think there was a question in there, Karen, I just saw pop through, and it asked about zooming in. I think this would be a great time to answer that. Can you just read that question for me?
Sure. Does the view enable more zoom into the goalkeeper? It's a pretty distant shot.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And the answer is no, but there's a reason, right? We do a lot of research with college coaches, not just myself and Tim, but around the country. If we were to zoom in this moment, all we would see is the save, right? The save is important, but I can see that from here. As I start to watch as this play builds through midfield and as the camera pans, right? As we get to here, if I'm zoomed on the goalkeeper, I can't see the decision. I can't understand what's going on with the back four, and I lose context, right? And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in at Trace, is giving the college coach what they're actually looking for, right? If I was given a highlight reel to a parent and they want to show it at a graduation party, I might want to zoom in and see the goalkeeper and see if they were smiling when they made that save. But for me, I really want to get a good look at what's happening throughout the whole game. But that's a fantastic question.
Yeah. The other thing I'd add is, these playlists are going to college coaches, and this is their profession, and they'll know. They don't have to zoom in to see the particular brand of shoe or the particular style of glove an individual is wearing. That's all taken care of. But I agree with Michael wholeheartedly, is the more context you can give it, the more complexity, which actually makes for a better evaluation, because now we're reading multiple levels within a goalkeeper and actually within this individual's decision-making process, which is a complete evaluation. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Perfect. Great.
We have a couple more questions if we have time.
Sure, we love our goalkeepers.
When editing, would you organize based on the 4 moments, highlights of in possession, then transition to out of possession highlights, or would you mix them?
I think that probably relates more to a field player. I don't know about you, Michael. I think for my goalkeepers, their playlist might have a little bit, it would encompass all 4 of those because you can obviously show a lot of different positionings within the game. But I think for me, in those first 5 moments, from a goalkeeper, I would stress the goalkeeper's ability in the air in traffic. That I would think 3 of those first 5 moments should incorporate that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think for a goalkeeper, we want to, in that first 5 is big, and you want to catch the attention of the coach. And that's how you're going to do that. Okay. Ability in traffic, catching a ball in traffic, show a big save for sure. Right. If you have that big thundering punt that we talked about before, show that, right? Show kind of a cross section of yourself in that first 5, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't try to break them out that way.
Yeah.
I think that would be one. I think that would be very difficult. And you don't need to spend quite that much time on that. I would spend it more on finding really good moments of you doing great things.
Another question that I think you answered with your response about context earlier, but when putting together highlight reels, build up and build out clips for goalkeepers are a total time drainer. Thoughts on that?
I'll take that one to start, Tim. Time drainer, I don't think so. Again, I think, and again, one of the beauties of Trace ID is that you can customize this to any school that you are looking to be recruited at. So for instance, there's some schools that put a premium on building out of the back, right? With those schools, you're going to want to highlight that. Your ability to connect passes, your ability to support your back 4, connecting a short pass, going over a forward line into an outside back. Those things become very important. If you're getting recruited by some other schools that play a little more direct, and neither one is correct, but if they, a school chooses to play a little more direct, you might not show as much of that. You might show a little bit more of, maybe because the game gets stretched a little more, maybe you deal a little bit more with you handling breakaways. But again, with Trace ID, you have the ability to customize that per school and how you do that. Hopefully that answered the question. Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I got, I don't think it's a waste of time, because I think what maybe this was alluding to is if you include the entire build out phase, right? From goalkeeper to center back to outside back, and kind of as they progress through the thirds, yeah, that may be a time drain. But with Trace and with Trace ID and our moment creator, you can now adjust those trace bot moments that maybe you only include, the distribution to the mid-range level and a pass or 2 after that. That helps. Obviously, it showcases the goalkeeper and their distribution ability, but it doesn't necessarily have that time drain that I think this question is alluding to. So you've got a lot of flexibility within Trace to highlight that particular skill by not adding on extra seconds. Yeah.
On average, how many clips should a goalkeeper curate within each category?
Good question. And I would never think about breaking it down a certain number of clips for a certain number of, assign it to a specific skill, because you still want to showcase your best moments, but you still want to check all those technical boxes. So I think, remember, we're not trying to mind read college coaches. So if you're really good in the air, maybe you have 2 or 3 extra moments of there, and maybe you're not a really great shot stopper, but you still include 1 or 2 of those just to make sure that you show that you have that ability. But your strength is going to be your strengths, and that's what you're going to highlight. So it may kind of not drown the other ones out, because you're still highlighting them and drawing attention to them. But you always lead with your strength, right? What do you think? Man, I when we put this together, I didn't think we'd have as many questions on goalkeepers, but this has been great. And goalkeepers, your college process is very unique in many ways, and it is different than a field player, largely because field players can play multiple positions and goalkeepers for the most point are goalkeepers. So you do have a unique process, and you're going to have a unique Trace ID playlist for sure.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. I think, and the other piece is a lot of these questions are very, they're not specific only to goalkeepers. I think and how you're selecting moments, and a lot of the stuff that you do with our groups when they start with Trace and getting them going and explaining Trace ID and how you work with Trace ID. I think a lot of these questions are actually straight to that and not only to goalkeeping.
Yeah.
So these are actually really good questions. These have been perfect.
All right, I'll take the outside backs, the number 2 and the number 3. And the evolution of the outside backs, obviously in the modern game, has been really kind of fun. And it's really now transitioning into college soccer. The number 2 and number 3 are actually, I consider, to be the modern day playmakers. The adaptation of the game to exploit width, to exploit overloads, to attack the half space and out wide is very, very crucial to outside backs. And therefore, their skill set is now really becoming a lot more on the attacking side and on the transitional side. So the list that we have here is kind of encompasses that. The 1v1 ability for outside backs will always still remain the most prominent. But it's not just the ability to win a tackle, but it's can you win a tackle, regain possession, and begin the attack. When I was growing up as a player, I was always taught that defenders, center backs included, are actually the most intelligent players on the field. And they're intelligent because they have to defend 5 things every second of every minute of every game: the goal, the ball, space, passing lanes, and obviously their direct opponent. And they've got to be constantly changing and reshaping every time that ball moves. So the ability to read, to scan the game on the defensive side of things, but also on the attacking side of things, when to go forward, how to time your run forward, risk versus reward, right? And obviously how quickly you can do that, exploiting the counter or obviously preventing the counter. Long and short passing, the ability to combine through the thirds to play diagonal, but it's also not just lumping the ball forward, especially when you get into the attacking third as an outside back. It's having a little sophistication with your service. Different types of run require different types of service, and an outside back needs to have all of those or showcase all of those in their Trace ID playlist. And the last one is overall athleticism, and that's soccer-specific athleticism. Outside backs now just aren't going up to midfield and stopping, but they're in fact are box-to-box players now. So being able to attack and being able to defend over 80, 90 minutes is crucial to exploit here. So this individual clip you see here, it really does a good job, I think, of checking a lot of those boxes. You'll see it begin here. Red gets dispossessed. Outside back steps in and kind of makes a little half tackle and then commits to this next one. But what she does is after she makes that tackle, her first thought is, I'm going to go forward. And that change of mentality, that instant, all right, I've won, now we're going to go forward and exploit it, is great. But then she's also composed, and she finds this little diagonal, draws the center back forward, nice combination in that space that the center back stepped from, and they get a good quality shot. That's what college coaches want. That's the ability to switch, to keep going forward, to generate something very positive and remain composed the whole time. I like this moment quite a bit. To add a little bit of fun to our webinar here, I'm going to throw this at Michael, And this section of our webinar is called Good or Bad Moment. Is this?
Well,
go
and
ahead.
I think the answer is there is no perfect moment, Tim.
Yeah.
So as we watch this, the outside back here makes a decision, goes with it, is destructive, and stops play. Right? He made a decision. I really like that he makes a decision. Right? Is it a good one? In this case, yes. Okay, so that is a good decision. Now, at the next level, though, is the attacking player in that situation good enough to play the pass right now? Okay, if that player is good enough to play the pass right now, which most are, then that player has made a very poor decision, has left his team in a really bad spot, right? Which would be a negative for that moment. But there's also a ton of positives in this moment. We can see the player's athleticism. We can see their commitment. We can see their physicality. Not afraid to get a little dirty. I did notice a couple names on the list here. We do have a former Oakwood soccer player who played with me. Doc, that looks like one of my tackles actually, and maybe one of my decisions. But either way, this is a good decision and a bad one. And I think that's a perfect picture of there is no perfect moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really good moment. It shows that quick burst of speed, ability to close down, the commitment to tackle. But then I also wanted people to realize that as we analyze this, we're also looking about what ifs. So what if he did miss it? And Michael's right. Had this ball been played a half a second earlier, this 7 is in 3v2 versus 2 center backs who are having to shift 45 yards with a free 11 running down on the far post, now completely unmarked. So, but that's how coaches analyze video, that there are multiple levels to every single moment. And this is a good one, and this checks a lot of boxes, but also knowing that coaches think that far in advance. And it becomes that detailed. So should we go on sorry, Karen, any questions about our number 2s and our number 3s, the modern day playmakers?
No questions about this position at this time.
In a way, I'm kind of sad about that. I thought we'd get some more.
Tim, we must have nailed it. We nailed it.
We did. You want to dive into the center backs here, Michael?
I'd love to. Center backs, as we think about them as coaches, we think about your center back is the strength of your team. You stand back there a lot of times by yourself, with a partner in crime back there, but you stand back there and you got to be the strength of the group. And you got to show this in your moments, right? I've recruited for a long time. I recruited for 20 years at the college level, right? You have to show your ability to break up play. You got to show your ability to separate attackers from the ball, your mentality to eliminate the opposition's number 9. We actually used to track, when I was still at Ohio State University, we used to track how many times the opposition's number 9 would touch the ball in a half. We knew if we kept that number under 3 or 4 times in a half, we were probably doing a very good job at the center back position, and we weren't going to give away many goals. So that's an example of that. I think another piece that you'd have to show as a center back one of the traits is you have to be dominant in the air, and you must show that, right? You have to show your ability to go and win balls in the air. Otherwise, you're not going to be an effective center back at the next level, right? Another piece you got to show is your ability to manage space, and I'll talk about that as we look at the moment that's in front of you. But manage space to protect your goalkeeper. Okay, we don't want to expose our goalkeeper, leave our goalkeeper hanging out there. So that's a big part of our job. And last but certainly not least, probably should be first, is you got to lead the back four and you got to lead your whole team. Right? You have to be vocal, which is very hard to show in a highlight. Okay, but you can definitely show your ability to affect your team through build-up play. One of the questions that was asked earlier was about how long of build-up should we show? Well, for a center back, you could show a little more to show after, and you can see here, she's going to play out. She plays out, or midfielder lets her down, but she actually came with it, and she's able to win the next pass. Right? If she had just passed and stood there and not condensed space, she would have been in big trouble. Okay, so that's a great moment for this center back. Okay, this moment, and we'll let it play out one more time. But this moment shows great center back play from two center backs. This kid's going to get the ball here, play a good ball in the midfield. The midfielder's got to do better there. Okay, that's simple. If she comes back in and wins the ball again, is constructive, it's not destructive, keeps the ball. And now this center back comes in and makes the other team's number 9 life difficult, gets some help from another. But look where the ball goes. It goes backwards. Okay. If both teams were chasing this game, that should be in both center backs' moments. They've both done a wonderful job there. Absolutely done a wonderful job. The piece I didn't touch on yet is the attacking side of being a center back, and that game has changed. I think our next moment, Tim, is going to show that, and you're going to take that one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and see that.
So we'll see a really good back four shape. We're changing the point of attack, and here it comes to this weak side center back. What I really like about this moment is that initiative. That initiative to break the line, go positively on the dribble. And this moment ends up working out with a decent service, ball gets cleared. Now from our game is this a good or bad moment? This is a positive moment. I think this shows a really good positive characteristic of a center back, a willingness to attack. Now, maybe the decision worked out, but he enters the middle of the field. It ends up being a 1v3. He kind of gets out of. So maybe an earlier decision to play that ball a little bit wider at a different angle still could have had a positive result. But for me, I think it's this mentality. I think that this is something to have in your Trace ID playlist from a center back. This is a back to front type moment. I think this is a positive one for sure.
Yeah, and again, I would just reiterate on that one. That's another ability to customize your playlist, right? You know, you're talking to you ladies who are on the call today. You know, you're talking to Mark Krikorian at Florida State. You know, he likes his center backs to play make from the back. That would be a moment you'd want to show him, right? But you're talking to another coach who really wants to be safe. You probably don't show this, right? Because right here, this is great. The initiative, like Coach said, he takes the ball here. This defender makes a bad decision. Now he needs to pass it. Yeah, he gets lucky. That's actually a tackle pass from the other team that puts him into a great spot, right? Again, that's that ability there of going into your Trace ID, removing that moment and putting another one in its place, and the ability to do that for every school to customize that. May take you an extra 5 minutes, but it gives you a great way to really market yourself to that particular school that you're interested in. I think that's super important.
Yeah. No, very good. All right, so let's start working our way up the field here. Let's move on to the number 6, the defensive center midfielders. And similar to the outside backs, we're seeing a little bit of a minor revolution in how number 6s are evaluated, how number 6s are used. Within your playlist, this is going to be important to check a lot of those boxes. One of the characteristics is the ability to read the game. On the defensive side, shielding the back forward, playing in those passing lanes, but also on the attacking side, when to play possession, when to keep it, and then obviously when to play the ball forward. In a way, you are a little bit of the rhythm. They used to say that the 8 is the rhythm and the 10, but the way the game is playing, especially with maybe even a double pivot, the 6s are kind of those decision makers. Way back in the day, everyone felt that the 6 just have to be destructive. That whole role, you don't play out of them. All they're there to do is to just disrupt. And that's still an important part. 6s still need to shield the back 4. They still need to be very good 1v1. They still need to be very good in numbers down, defending, and playing passing lanes. They also have to be extremely intelligent because oftentimes they're now overloaded. So they have to understand tactical space, this ability when to play forward, when to retain possession. And then long range and short range distribution. Can we play short? Can we combine? Or can I play on the diagonal? And can I be very specific and sophisticated when I am playing long? Am I texturing it? Am I weighting it properly? And then linking and combination play that we talked about, and obviously ability in the air. this moment here, if you watch the number 6 in blue, and I'll wait till it kind of clicks over here a little bit, but he does something very unique. He's showing out wide. He creates a little bit of an overload, a 2v1 and then a 3v2. And then the ball gets played forward and they eventually get dispossessed here. There's that little 3v2, gets dispossessed, but he doesn't stop. Now he ends up being destructive. He closes ground, but his next thought is, you know what? I'm going to carry the ball forward, picks his head up, sees the keeper 8 yards off of his line, and pings it in the back of the net. That's a perfect number 6. This is an ideal moment to have because it showcases your defensive awareness, showcases the transition, and then showcases some soccer IQ. I do like this moment a lot for sure. Ready for the next one? The next defensive midfield moment here. You want to take this one, Michael?
Yeah, this is great. Okay, so this is going to be like a prototypical number 6, just sitting there in front of the back 4, right? Keeping the ball, doing their job. Right now, fantastic. Okay, fantastic. Right? And I wish I could interact with people and actually ask some questions if they really saw what actually happened. But this number 6, again, as Coach mentioned, like the game has changed, right? In the past, this ball would come into the 6 would spray it outside, play a wide pass, and then would just sit there. Okay. This number 6 is going to recognize space, pop off, find space in behind that player that he brought into that space, and now he's become an attacking player. That shows a college coach a lot more of a number 6 than just someone who sits in front of a back 4, someone who, you know, and I'm guilty, right? When I talk about number 6s, the first thing I'll ever say is that they're never going to be an All-American, right? They're probably not going to be all conference, but you cannot play without them, right? This guy could be all conference, right? All-American. Vision to make that run, it was the right time. Okay, those are all things that college coaches are looking for. And through the view, you can actually see, because you can see context, you can see the whole field. He absolutely made a great decision there. That was awesome.
Yeah. I love this little move, how he sets up the defender. This is a very unique thing. The defender turns his head to follow the ball. He checks back a little bit, and then he exploits that space in front. To me, that's just intelligence. Now, I saw one question pop up that I don't know what the full question was. I just saw a little bit of the text, but a lot of our moments are ending in goals. And that's the case with these particular moments. But like for this one, this kind of double move, him exploiting, but the secondary decision is once he gets into this space, his idea to take this shot from about 30 yards out isn't necessarily a very good decision. But I still think the moment overall is a really positive one to add. So it's not a perfect moment, and it didn't end up in goal. And in fact, you could probably flip it just like, well, that's just not a very good moment at all. But the build up to it and the way that I'm reading it and the characteristics that this player is showing, despite kind of this final result, still is extremely positive for sure. I don't know, Karen, was that the right answer to that question?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which question that was. I didn't actually see that one. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
I do have another question for you. What is something that can make you stand out over other midfielders in the 6 to college coaches?
Oh, it's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
It's a great question. I think, man, I mean, I did it for a long time. I think for me, you know, it's tough because it's not a highlight position. It's really not. It's not a glory position. It's a do the dirty work job. It's a sit in and do things no one else wants to do. It's go and win balls, right? So there's a piece of me that says, okay, if I'm recruiting a number 6, just show me a bunch of tackles. Show me someone in the middle of the field who goes out and just gets the job done for their teammate. Show me a good teammate that goes to war every time they play. because that's the type of 6 I like, right? That's the type of 6 I like. This 6 right here who does this, I'm showing that moment if I'm him. You know, like I think that's a really good positive moment. But I think for me, and Coach can add his, Tim can add his, but like I think for me, I like a warrior 6. I like someone who's going to play 90 minutes. I can't take them off. I can't take her off. They mean too much. They're the heart of my team. And how do I show that? I show that with tackling. I show that with connecting the team with passes side to side. And I might even throw in some of me breaking lines, getting passes into the forwards. Can I find the 9? You know, things like that. But the gravy for me is watching someone get in and win balls and do the nasty work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think I think a lot, I'm trying to think out loud. So I think a lot depends on that particular coach. Like Michael has a very defined identity of a number 6, and every school is going to be different. Every conference is going to be different, whether that's Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. So I think this goes back to one of our earlier slides where you present your greatest strength within that position. And some coaches are going to really like it. You know, they're going to really like that warrior, or maybe they want a player that has a little bit more on the attacking side. Their midfield maybe is a little bit more transitional and not necessarily, you know, stagnant in their, you know, in their formation. So I think, yeah, I think it goes back to that, your strengths and showcasing your strengths as a playlist, and maybe casting a net. Or actually, let me take that back. I think it goes back to you showcasing your strengths, but doing research to prospective schools and identifying possible playing style fits. And that's a whole nother webinar. I mean, that is a whole other thing, but that's what I would do. One, I think you obviously, you find out your strengths and you highlight your strengths, but then you're also doing the research into those universities. And the more research that you do into those universities, the better result you're going to have at the end. So I view it from, I didn't really answer the question. I just went around and around and around, but I think that's the best way to do, is always showcase yourself. Because I think there's schools that a lot of players aren't going to be a fit in. And that's just the way it is. But the more research and the bigger net you cast, the more landing spots you're going to have. And that's, to me, that's, I really like that aspect of Trace ID. It gives all of our players a frictionless way to cast a very large net to find the right landing spot. So always showcase yourself, your strengths of your strengths, kind of supplementing what we went through. And I know we're kind of going on time, so let's jump into the 8 and the 10, our attacking midfielders here, Michael.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, very simple. I mean, these are the playmakers in your team. Whether you look at it as the 8 or the 10, they're both attacking minded players. Your number 8 is going to be more of the box to box midfielder, probably going to have a little more defensive responsibility of those 2 players. The number 10 is the creative engine that drives your team going forward. They're the one that we want on the ball. They're the one that's going to have to go find the ball. And I think for both of these players, their traits are very similar, though. When I look at traits for these guys, I mean, the most important piece is you have to be able to show your technical ability in a 360-degree environment, right? You have to show you have eyes in the back of your head. You can improv to get out of trouble, and absolutely have the skill, not necessarily technique, okay, but you have the skill to work your way out of a phone booth. And I think those are things that I highlight, or I would highlight in my Trace ID as I do it. Your moments should absolutely include you scoring goals, shooting balls from distance, and your movements off the ball. And Coach showed a couple of great movements off the ball in that last one. But you know, that we'll see a lot more of those. But your movement off the ball, you can absolutely see and trace, and I think that's very helpful. And then the last but certainly not least, one of the things about being a number 10 and being a number 8 is you are in the opposition scouting report, flat out. At the next level, everybody's watching video, you're scouting your opponent. We know that this player right here is going to receive the ball. We know she can play. right? So you're always going to have a shadow when you're running around, and your moments need to include you being dynamic and finding ways to work your way out and making chances for yourself and that you can create for yourself. So just looking at this moment, as we go through this, you'll see the final pass here at the end, which kind of lets her down a little bit. Okay, but here you'll see her as she comes into play. Okay, this is fantastic. A lot of different things going on. Okay, great vision to recognize that the defender's gotten onto the wrong shoulder. She allows the ball to beat her. She doesn't necessarily even have to take a touch as the ball comes across. She recognizes space. She feels it, whoop, and off she goes. Now she's into the next layer. She doesn't slow down. And she picks the right pass. The pass just didn't quite come off. Okay, but this is a great example of a moment that would be very, very attractive to just about any college coach in the country. Heck of a move going forward from her.
Would you be worried about the failure of the final pass?
Not from the rest of it. Not from the rest of it. She does so much well here. I think I might be talking to the center forward about her running a little bit. I wouldn't be too concerned about the final pass, to be perfectly honest. This right here is brilliant.
Yeah.
She recognized everything she needed to recognize. I might not even end the moment.
Yeah.
As a college coach, this is me right here. I watch kid shows in, whoop, turns, and then she goes, right? So now I'm excited. I move on to the next moment.
Yeah.
I didn't really need to see that part.
Like to me, obviously that's a taught skill, but there's also just some natural instincts within this to understand that the defender's on the high hip and then give that little kind of half step, open up and go. So I agree with you. The final pass, yes, not perfect, but I think this mentality, this technique under pressure is a really good moment to have despite the end result.
Yep, for sure. Awesome.
Well, let's see. Next we've got our wingers, our 7-11s. And I'll jump in on this and then you can bring us home with the number 9s here at the end. So wingers, 1v1. And I can't state that enough. Within your playlist, in particular within the first 5 moments of your Trace ID playlist, having 2 to 3 different types of 1v1 moments, whether you're taking them to the outside, getting to the inline, or you're dragging them. Taking them to the outside or whether or not you're dragging them to the inside. It's really important. Everyone is you're often depending on the style of play and a college's game model, you're going to be isolated. That's the point, right? So displaying that skill is particularly within those first 5 moments is crucial. And 7-11, they're not just service machines. They're not just there to provide crosses, but can you finish? Can you score goals? Can you score goals multiple ways? Are they breakaways? Are they off the service on the weak side? Are they right around the penalty spot off of an end line service? Getting into the box. And then the different crossing techniques. We have a lot of similarities between the outside backs and wingers, in particular when it comes to this skill. Being sophisticated with your services. Different types of run require different types of services. And then athleticism, very similar to the outside backs. Have to have the power, the speed, and the fitness to play long stretches of time at a very, very high pace with precise skill. Because you are the ones that are transitioning extremely fast and more times than not, a lot more than other positions just because of a team's particular way. This moment here, I really like from a couple of different perspectives. The first perspective here is as this moment builds on one side, and we're concentrating on the white winger here, is you'll see him set this defender up, and this outside to in movement it's intelligent, very similar to that defensive midfield moment we saw a little bit ago, but it's getting the defender to open a little bit turn his hips, and then exploit the space in between the center back and this outside back. And right there, as he goes into it, ball gets played in behind. Yes, he doesn't finish it. So, oh my gosh, this is an incomplete moment. Not really. When you're when you're kind of in the weeds here on this analysis, is what was done prior to that. What got him into that space? What got him into that really dangerous scoring opportunity? So for me, I really like this. It's not your typical wide moment, but here he is darting in behind the center back. Great little pass. Chance goes wide. Pretty decent save. The other thing is he wasn't afraid. He showed so much bravery. He could have gotten hammered, but he didn't. He displays that goal scoring mentality. So even though he didn't finish, I still like that. I still like that a lot. That he's willing to do that in order to get a result. So,
Tim, I think that's a great point, though. Like, you mentioned, like, he didn't score, but you're not going to score every time.
Yeah.
But for him to put himself out there, when players put themselves out there, coaches love that, right? Because we know you're going to take chances, right? Taking chances is part of this game, right? Playing it safe doesn't work all the time. Again, and at the next level, you don't score goals if you play it safe. You flat out don't score goals. If you don't take chances and try something a little risky here and there, you're not going to score. Not going to happen. Defenders are too good. So I love that moment, and I could care less if the ball goes in the goal. That's a great point, Coach.
I'm the same. So I know we're running a little bit low on time, and I want to have some time for questions and answers. So let's roll to the strikers, number 9s.
We're good on the number 9 because this moment is so quick, because this number 9 is so good. And the number 9's job for me is the most simple job out there. And I'm kind of joking, but I do think it is a simple job. You have one really clearly defined job as a number 9. You are the goal scorer. You are the person that the team looks to be that one that's going to score. And that flat out is what you highlight in your trace ID. Goal after goal after goal. Every time you score, it should be in there. I can think back in my days recruiting, Coach, you can echo in on this one, I'm sure. He's like, you're watching and you're going, I came to watch this number 9. And I'm like, I'm not sure. And I asked one of my friends who coached really good level in the ACC. And I said, what do you think of this one? He goes, well, I've came and watched her play 5 times and I haven't seen her score yet. Well, I don't think we're going to recruit her as a number 9 then. Right. So your job here is to score goals, right? Number 2, your ability to hold up the ball and link play together for your team. Super important. I don't think as important as scoring goals, but is definitely important. Your movement, immediately always trying to challenge the back 4, always trying to challenge the center backs. Can you get in between those center backs and create a problem for them whenever your team is in possession? And even when the other team has the ball, are you always thinking about what happens when we win it? Can I go behind and score? Again, to score. Okay, bravery. Coach touched on that one already with our 7s and 11s. Okay, but you gotta be willing to put your head in there. It might get knocked off, but sometimes it's worth it. Ball ends up in the back of the goal. It was worth getting your head knocked off. Your dribbling ability and timing of your runs very important, and being able to play back to goal and get other players involved in the game and get other players in behind, for sure. Right, as we look at this moment, you see a couple things really, really quickly. Right from the kickoff, all the number 9 for the blue team is thinking about is how can I get behind the other team? Right from the start. Kickoff goes, look at her, straight into the back 4. Didn't even think about playing possession, not even considering it. Here she is now, and look, runs right in between them. Doesn't run offside. Not a bad way to start the game. I think everybody would agree. The white team is now on the back foot for the rest of the game. That number 9 has changed the game. And that, for me, I think if I were to try to do it all in 10 seconds, I would say the number 9's job is to change games, and goals change games. This player changed this game in the first 2 minutes. So in your highlight reels as number 9s and your trace IDs, make sure that you're putting goals that you're scoring. And all different kinds, with your head, with your feet, ones where you had to slide and knock a ball in the goal, pretty goals, not so pretty goals. But be sure to get as many goals in there as you can.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter how they cross that line, as long as they're going in. I think that's the most important thing. Karen, were there any questions about our goal scoring number nines?
One moment. None specifically for number 9. I think I'm going to hold all the trace-wide questions for the end.
I think we're at the end. Do we want to go?
We're there.
Do we want to go through those, or did we want to provide a different type of formatted response?
Charles, do we have time for a few trace-wide questions?
Definitely.
All right, excellent. With many leagues getting canceled with the pandemic and inability to obtain game film, what would be an alternative to present to college coaches?
Can you repeat the question? Because I'm going to, yeah.
Sure. I think the question is a little bit confusing, but I think they're asking if they don't have current game film, what can they send to college coaches instead?
Okay. If you're not currently tracing, right? If there are still some places that are in lockdown. I think the most important thing is to at least keep that communication open. And by update, I think if you have video that's within maybe a 6 to 8 month time frame, I still think that's okay. But once it starts to get longer than that, I think you might be doing yourself a disservice in that you get better so quickly that a version of you 8 months ago was not as good as the updated version. And so that's one thing that Trace ID does very well, is we always present the most up-to-date version of our players through Trace ID. So I would just keep it open, and hoping you do get a video solution quickly. We've got some information obviously here on the screen here, but keep it open, saying, yeah, we're working on a video solution. Until I get it up, I remain interested, but keep that door open. And then when you do get video, or they're able to get off campus, depending on the dead period, then you can exploit it that way. Yeah.
Just to add to that question, should they be continuously adding to their playlist, or keep it limited to a limited number of moments?
The best thing about Trace ID is you can update coaches with new moments with very little work and make a massive impact. And the key is I have a Tim-ism, and I don't know, Michael, if you heard some of my Tim-isms before, but this one is, the more that you recruit a school, the more likely it is they're going to recruit you. And so if you are constantly updating them, not with the same video, but an updated playlist, that maybe it's only 2 or 3 or 4 moments from a weekend, and that sort of workflow, getting your name on their radar constantly, is really going to make this massive impact. So I think it's not the number on your playlist per se. I think it's the action of updating your playlist, sending it out week in and week out. And I think there are 2 specific reasons. Is one, you're giving them some development. You're showing how good you are getting week in and week out. You're providing that kind of long-term tracking. The other aspect, by doing it that way, by recruiting a school week in and week out, is you're demonstrating some characteristics that every college coach wants in their program. You are showing how intelligent you are, how organized you are, how determined you are. And you can't get that by sitting there in a canvas chair and watching a player. You can only get that through action. And so now, not only are you providing this great playlist, but you're also displaying kind of those character moments that everybody likes. So yeah, I say update it, send it, update it, send it. Don't necessarily worry about the number of moments, as long as you keep adding good moments to the top. Those are what coaches are going to view. Then I think you're in that way.
And Tim, I'll just add one little thing to that. And I think you're absolutely spot on. And to the person who asked that question, I think the piece, and I maintain this, whether I was at New Mexico State, Rhode Island, Ohio State, this part didn't matter to me.
Mhm.
Okay, when a player recruited me or recruited us, I felt obligated to recruit them. That didn't mean that I was going to ultimately end up with that player at my school, but I felt obligated to them. If a player just showed up to an ID clinic, I was thankful that they came to my ID clinic, but they didn't really spend any time really showing me why they wanted to come to my school, whatever that was. So your ability to personalize and the ability to actually show the coach that you are really interested in their school, they will then do the work to find out if you're a fit or not. You might not be, but you might very well be, right? But you have to stay in front of them. Hey, college coaches are great. They're good people. I was one for a really long time. I'm a pretty approachable guy, no problem. I'm not the most organized guy on the planet. Anybody that knows me would tell you that. Okay. I'm very passionate about player development. I love recruiting good players. Okay. But I lost track of players. Absolutely would happen in the recruiting process. I would lose track of players because they didn't stay in touch with me enough. Right? I needed more information from them. Okay. Stay in touch with them. They want to hear from you. Otherwise, they're stuck on a computer dealing with something that doesn't deal with soccer players. They want to deal with soccer players. Guys, when you go through this process, college coaches want to work with you. Okay, and the good ones will tell you, hey, look, it's not a good fit. And you can move on. But create that obligation with them. Very, very important.
And even more so now in this landscape. And depending where you are in the NCAA timeline of things, if you're post June 15th going into your junior year or pre June 15th going into your junior year, what you're doing is just exactly as Michael talked about, is you're putting yourself at the front of the line. The more that you update them, the more you're going to get the benefit of the doubt, or the more you're going to create at least the opportunity for them to see you play live. And so when all these showcases are happening and all college coaches are able to go off campus, regardless of financial considerations or COVID restrictions, they're not going to be able to send as many staff members to certain camps, to certain showcases. And you guys know what it's like. There's 15 games going on at one time. But if you have spent 6 months recruiting, I guarantee you that those coaches are going to show up, as opposed to someone who just sent some random pre-showcase email. And I don't know about you, Michael, but when I was in Power Five, like it got to the point where I stopped registering for events because I couldn't handle all the, the emails 2 days before I went. So I curated my list based off of those players who were emailing me and recruiting me 4, 5, 6 months out. And it may not have worked out, like you said. Like I may have showed up at a field watching a player and it didn't work out. But the point is that these players generated an opportunity for themselves by constant communication with constant new content. And Trace ID accomplishes that in such a way that you guys don't have to work and spend hours and hours slaving over this editing and all that stuff. It's all done for you. And now you can quickly share it and make this massive impact. That's, to me, that's the beauty of Trace ID.
Absolutely.
One more, Karen, here before we.
Oh my gosh, it's hard to pick just one. Let's see. Is it okay to use clips from scrimmages or high school games versus regular club and league matches?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. Especially in these times that we're in, I think you got to use what you got. If you have stuff from high school, use it. Right? I mean, typically coaches don't recruit as much from high school games, but everybody's having to adjust. It's not just you guys as players, as parents, as club coaches, high school coaches. It's the college coach has to adjust as well. It's not a perfect evaluation if it's a scrimmage or a high school game. It's not perfect, but it's something, and something right now is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. I think if if your high school is tracing and your club is tracing and you're adding all moments from training, club, and high school, I think that's great. I know a lot of college coaches don't necessarily recruit from high school, but I think if you're displaying similar characteristics in a competitive club environment as you are in a high school environment, you're still developing, you're still getting a chance for identification. So I think I think the more content that you have, different competitive environments, the more complete picture you're presenting. So I would include all those types of moments for sure. That's a good question. All right, well, Karen, maybe one more.
Would you include heat maps or stats in what you send to coaches?
The good thing with Trace ID is that your heat map and your player performance data is automatically updated with the 5 most recent games. So anytime that you share your Trace ID, those are part of the Trace ID feature and they're automatically updated. So yes, and I think and Michael, I don't know, I mean, we've never talked about this, but the way that I view Trace ID is that college coaches are evaluating their current players in much the same way. They're watching them train and compete. They're using video analysis. They're using academic and social and player performance data. And now Trace ID is giving them that exact information that they can now use for recruiting. So they're kind of using the same processes. So I would include as much data as possible to help complete that college evaluation.
Yeah, again, I agree. I think you use all the tools you have.
Yeah.
Right now is an environment that none of us have dealt with. It's crazy. You know, I mean, I started now with Trace 4.5 months ago. I've lived 7 months of the pandemic in the college environment, and it was the strangest, 5 to 7 months of my career, 20 years. Absolutely the strangest thing ever, not being able to go and recruit. My last recruiting trip was March 5th last year. If I was still sitting in that chair, I would not have been out of the office recruiting for over a year. So kind of got off track, but the idea on that answer is that anything you can give sets you apart from someone else. The stat package that comes along with Trace is very simple. So the college coach does not need a sports science degree to figure it out. I think that's a huge piece of it. Okay, I've used performance data my whole career, and I've used 3 lines of a spreadsheet that provided 80 lines. Right, we do five characteristics here, or five categories that we look at, and they're very simple, but they give you a very clear picture. So I would definitely include them, and they're already in your Trace ID, so they're in there if the college coach knows to look for them.
Well, good. We'll kind of wrap things up here. I want to thank Charles and Karen for joining us tonight and kind of helping with the logistics of this. And I want to thank my coaching partner and Trace partner, Michael, for providing some incredible insight for us this afternoon. And I also want to thank you guys for joining us. Depending on your time zone, kind of a weird time in the afternoon, but if you joined us late, this will be on Trace's YouTube channel here in the next couple of hours. And for those questions that we weren't able to get to, we're going to answer them and get them out to you over the next day or two. And look forward to something like this similar in the next couple of weeks. This was great. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully provided you with some insight, not only about Trace ID, but about the general recruiting process. So thank you guys, and have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, Tim.
See you guys.